A new generation of Lexus RX SUV arrived earlier this year. Perhaps the big change in RX land is that this 5th generation has dropped 7 seats in favour of a 2-row format. And it comes in 3 engines and 3 trim levels, together with a couple of enhancement pack for a 14-strong model range to take on the likes of BMW X5 and Mercedes-Benz GLE. This is the RX350 F Sport, which starts from $99,900 before on-roads. And as the name and its appearance suggest, the big Lexus does promise big driving enjoyment. This particular example fits the enhancement pack too, which lifts the price to around $104,000, which is right in the middle of the range that starts at around 87 grand and tops out at 126. Before you ask, that enhancement pack adds a panoramic glass roof, a digital rear view mirror, a heated steering wheel and parking assistance. So, is it as fun as its appearance suggests? And can it do it while upholding the values of luxury and refinement that come with the Lexus badge? Well, let's find out. Chasing cars. Honest reviews of your next car.
Brought to you by
But first, it would be remiss not to acknowledge that Lexus has really upped its game in terms of styling with this new 5th generation. It is not a huge departure from the old RX design, although it does look both tougher and sleeker, particularly in F-Sport addenda. Key to this car's look is the front rolling stock, which comprise of 21-inch wheels, 400mm discs and huge 6-piston monoblock calipers. Opting for the F-Sport also gets you dedicated front and rear end styling. The F-Sport also sits on adaptive variable suspension that it shares with the Sport Luxury version. Now that's a steel spring suspension with adaptive dampers rather than a dedicated air suspension system. So there are quite a few subtle and not quite so subtle details in the F-Sport, but is it that quick? Let's check out under the bonnet. Lexus has dropped 6-cylinder power across the entire RX range, and you can tell as much when you look at the smaller 4-cylinder turbo engine under the bonnet. Most RX buyers will opt for the 350h version, which gets a 184 kilowatt petrol-electric hybrid 2.5 litre engine that's shared with the likes of Toyota Kluger and Camry. At the other end of the RX scale, the 500h F Sport Performance brings a parallel hybrid system, which is a first for Lexus. For its part of the equation, the 500h fits a 2.4 litre turbocharged 4-cylinder engine for its hybrid system that outputs 273 kilowatts and an undisclosed torque peak. Our 350 F Sport though is essentially the 500h powertrain without the electric hybrid augmentation. Well, sort of. The 2.4 here outputs 205 kilowatts and 430 newton meters, and interestingly that's 3 kilowatts up and 30 newton meters down on the petrol engine in the 500h. Sounds strange? Well, I'll tell you why. In 350 spec, the engine makes all its torque in the low end, whereas in the 500h hybrid it makes peak torque much higher in the RPM range because you're getting all the torque off the line from the electric motors. It's a pretty neat trick, and one that only seems to be privy to Lexus engineers. It uses an 8-speed conventional torque converter automatic, albeit one that actually does have a multi-plate clutch unit in it as well, and it can skip ratios going up and down. Unlike the hybrid, the 350 F Sport gets good old-fashioned mechanical all-wheel drive, which can send 75% of torque to the front and 25% to the rear, or distribute it evenly 50-50. Given that the 500h is called the F Sport Performance, it's fair to presume that this 350 version is the not-so-performing example. So let's take it for a drive and find out. The semi-performance 350 F Sport clocks in at around 2 tonnes. Well, 2,005 kilograms to be exact, and it feels at least that on the road. On one hand, that's not a bad thing because there's a real confidence in just how big and solid it feels on the move. The sheer solidity of the thing really brings an underpinning sense of luxury to the 350 F Sport. It's also backed up with what is really quite a quiet nature. A lot of that is undoubtedly down to a lot of sound deadening in this vehicle, but it is also a credit to Lexus's renown for suppressing noise, vibration and harshness. The RX is also fitted with active noise cancelling, which also at times does a good job of suppressing a ruckus from that turbo 4-cylinder engine. Lexus claims that the RX 350 F Sport will hit 100 km/h from a standstill in 7.6 seconds, but it proved quicker than that at our test track with a time of around 7.1. As mentioned earlier, the thing with the turbo petrol non-hybrid is that it piles in all of its torque low down in the RPM range, in this case 1700 RPM, which really does make the petrol version of the RX really quite flexible and drivable on road. The torque converter auto, with its tricky multi-clutch lockup on first gear, is certainly very smooth and refined, and there are no grumbles from the permanent all-wheel drive system. There is what Lexus calls a high-capacity rear locking differential, although the 350 really doesn't make enough stonk and torque on corner exit to make much use of it. Given that the all-wheel drive system can't really shuffle any more torque rearward than 50%, you really can't drive the Lexus RS on the throttle out of corners anyway. Realistically, the powertrain combination does make for a very nice cruiser. However, it's a bit underbaked if you're really coming at the F-Sport with performance expectations. There are some signs of enthusiasm, but it's really the vibe and the weight of the RX that sort of suppresses most of the fun factor out of the combination. And as a result, it's not nearly as potent or frisky as its exterior appearance might suggest. Dynamically, the 350 S Sport is reasonably competent, but it really doesn't drum up much in the way of fun factor. And in terms of fitting roles more neatly, it's probably better suited for long-legged grand touring. There are two switchable settings for the adaptive damping, and as you might expect, they're pretty good. However, they're not perfect. That's because those big wheels and brakes can make the ride feel a little fizzy over small bumps and high-frequency imperfections. There's also perhaps a little bit too much noise from the tyres and the suspension for what is essentially a luxury SUV. All up, there's a bit of a compromise in balancing the sportiness and the comfort on road, and the same can be said about the cabin, so let's go check that out. Lexus has confidently transformed RX into a vastly more contemporary space compared to the stale old 4th generation. But it doesn't lose a lot of the traditional Lexus stylisms, nor that real bank vault sense of build quality. It feels big, meaty, and quite isolating from the outside environment, which is really key to its luxury vibe. Thankfully, the Lexus multimedia horrors of old, including that terrible old joystick format, has been relegated to history and replaced from this big shiny 14-inch touchscreen. It's bright, clear, and fully featured, but if there is one small gripe, is that some of the features and tiles are hard to read for those of us with dodgy eyesight. That said, the panoramic view 360-degree camera system is utterly fantastic. Wireless CarPlay that did seem to detect and sync up my phone automatically, strangely, and wired Android Auto are par for the course. And you also get a selection of 6 USB ports in a variety of USB-A and C types. There are plenty of nooks and crannies for all your little oddment bits and pieces, as well as a fairly deep bin here for keys and wallets and the like that also features an inductive charging pad. The dual zone climate control has these very cool, colourful, novel dials to adjust the temperature, although what happens is the screen can put a lot of tiles there that can get a bit confusing to navigate on the fly. The digital driver screen is actually countersunk quite deeply into the dash, and Lexus has opted not to go for the big flat panel effect of some of its German rivals, and it will probably age a little better at that. Trim and material choice is typical Lexus, with a lot of richness and variety for a combined upmarket effect. I don't know about the electric door handles, which are a bit of an acquired taste, although I do like this stubby little unconventional transmission controller. One embarrassing own goal is that when you turn the steering wheel, it does expose these Phillips head screws. But otherwise, there's really not much to gripe about in here, including the fantastic seats, which are leather accented in the center and have these ultra suede wings. And the wheel itself is very nice in the hand, although it could do with a little more reach adjustment. Right, let's check out row 2. Unsurprisingly, with the absence of a third row eating up any space, row 2 is very spacious. The rear bench is quite form-fitting and the base has kind of stadium height, so if you're a little kid, you do get excellent visibility outside. The feel and the quality is equal to that in the first row, and it is fully featured, so you get stuff like third row climate control, dual USB-C ports, and a very elaborate fold-down center console with 2 cup holders and a little cubby. Again, Lexus could have squeezed another 2 seats in here, but really as a 5-seater, it works fantastically well. With the absence of a third row, you now get 612 litres with a nice flat load space. You also get the handy convenience of a 40-20-40 split folding rear bench that liberates 1,678 litres. Unlike some other RX variants, the F Sport 350 gets a space saver spare, and at 20 inches it's a huge one to fit over those massive front brakes. Lexus claims a fuel consumption figure of 8.7 litres per 100 on average combined. In our week with this particular example, it tended to hover around the mid to high 11 marks and would only dip down into single figures when you gave it long legs out on the motorway. We've seen consumption figures as low as the 6s for the 350h hybrid version, so in some situations this petrol version is around twice as thirsty. Servicing is capped at $695 per visit for the first 5 visits, which isn't too outrageous for a large luxury SUV with fairly warm performance. Meanwhile, warranty is a fairly solid 5 years of unlimited kilometre coverage. In the last 12 months, the median budget direct customer spent $1,443 to comprehensively insure a new Lexus RX. Everybody's situation is different and your premium will vary based on things insurers take into account, like where you live, how you drive, and where you garage your car. Overall, there's a lot to like about this 5th generation Lexus RX and its 350 F Sport mid-ranger. It looks great, the interior execution really ups its game for the breed, and as a 5-seater, it certainly has the comfort and refinement that meets expectations. And importantly, it maintains refinement, a sense of luxury, and all those key attributes that does draw so many buyers to the Lexus brand. The lack of a 7-seat option will deter some potential buyers, although the 5-seat format does fit the bill particularly well. But if it deserves a decent kick, it's not nearly as sporty as its presentation promises. For that, you're going to have to step up to the hybrid 500h F Sport performance and pry an extra 20 grand out of the piggy bank for the privilege. So that's what I think, but how about you? Put your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe while you're at it, and as always, thanks for watching Chasing Cars.